They didn't uninvite me, they didn't send a message, they just took my name off the list. No explanation, no apology, just silence. I found out from an Instagram story, a champagne toast on the yacht I co-owned, with my name replaced by my sister-in-law's Pilates instructor. At first I thought it was a mistake, that maybe the email got lost, that maybe I just missed something. But then I saw the cabin roster. My name wasn't missing, it had been crossed out. Deliberately, neatly, like I was never meant to be there. What they didn't know was that I still had the receipts, and I wasn't walking away this time. I found out the same way most betrayals show up these days, through an Instagram story I was never meant to see. It was Maya, Sienna's niece, posting a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking in the sun with the caption, "Whitmore family getaway. Anchors up. Can't wait." There it was, the Whitmore family's annual yacht trip. A tradition, they said, a legacy, something I'd only been invited to twice in the past 7 years, even though the yacht had my name on the papers. The first time I went, I had gently suggested we rotate destinations. The second time, Sienna made it painfully clear, I was a guest, not family. Still, I stared at that story longer than I care to admit. Faces I knew well. Tom with his ever-perfect smile, Flora holding a mimosa like a prop, Trent's little cousin Blake, his new fiancé draped across his arm. Even Aunt Carol was there, the one who always said she hated boats. Everyone was accounted for, everyone except me. I opened the group chat, Whitmore Family Voyagers. Trent had added me years ago, then quietly removed me after an incident with the Thanksgiving seating chart. Long story, no message, no update, no invitation. I wasn't surprised, but that didn't mean it didn't cut. I told myself maybe they forgot, maybe this was thrown together last minute, maybe. Until I saw the next post, a screenshot of the guest cabin list. A name had been crossed out, mine. And in its place, Sienna plus Claudia Pilates. Claudia, the woman who once mistook me for Trent's assistant, who called me Elaine the entire brunch. My hand didn't shake, but my jaw ached from clenching. Later that day, while washing dishes, my phone buzzed again. A voice note from Sienna, light, laughing, tossed like a cocktail napkin in a breeze. Well, at least the energy on board won't be so tight this year, right? Tight. That word stuck to my ribs like bad wine. At dinner that night, I tried to bring it up casually. Trent was half scrolling, half chewing. I said, "Did you know your family's heading out on the yacht again?" He blinked. "Yeah, I think Mom mentioned it. I'm pretty sure you're on the list." I tilted my head. "You sure?" He nodded, barely looking up. "Yeah, I'll double check." But I knew he wouldn't. He never did. That night, lying awake next to a man who could fall asleep through anything, I stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly, slicing the silence into pieces. And I thought to myself, it's not just the exclusion that hurts. It's how long I convinced myself it wasn't on purpose. How many times I sat at that table thinking I belonged, only to find out I never even had a seat. Before turning off the lamp, I pulled out my journal and wrote just one line. "Watch, don't react yet." Because something inside me had shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak. It was a knowing, a steady click inside my chest that whispered, this wasn't an accident, and you're done pretending it ever was. The next day, I rinsed out a glass at the kitchen sink, water running, the sun pouring through the window like it didn't know anything was wrong. My phone buzzed. I dried my hands on a dish towel, checked the screen. It was a message from Sienna. But it wasn't for me. It was a screenshot, accidentally forwarded. A thread from the Voyager planning group. Yes, they named it like some exclusive club. And right there in bold, a list of finalized cabin assignments. Under the portside guest rooms, my name had been crossed out. Neatly, cleanly, like a typo in a spreadsheet, like I had never been there. Next to the crossed-out text, a name in all caps, Claudia, with an emoji heart and a champagne pop. The woman who once told me she thought I was too buttoned up to be creative. I didn't even get angry, not yet. I just stared. Then, another message popped in, a voice note. Sienna's laugh, mid-conversation, casual, effortless. At least the vibe will be lighter without Evelyn. You know how her energy just sucks the air out of a room? I stood there frozen, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I had refused to say out loud. This wasn't passive exclusion, this was removal, deliberate, executed with a smile. I set the phone down gently. My hands didn't shake, my stomach didn't twist. But my jaw ached again, that same slow, dull throb that only comes from holding in too much for too long. At dinner, I didn't mention it. Trent scrolled through stock alerts between bites of grilled salmon. The silence between us thick, but familiar. I asked lightly, "Did you ever double-check the list?" He glanced up, confused. "Huh? What list?" "For the yacht trip." "Oh, yeah, I think Mom said you're on it. Should be." Then he went back to scrolling. I washed the dishes by hand that night, one by one. Not because the dishwasher was broken, because I needed time to think, to breathe, to stop myself from screaming into the void. That night in bed, I didn't sleep. I laid still, eyes open, listening to the soft click of the ceiling fan and the louder click of realization settling in my bones. They weren't forgetting me, they were removing me, systematically, politely, thoroughly. I'd seen the signs, skipped invites, photos where I was cropped out, events I must have missed the email for. I just didn't want to believe it, not from the people I tried so hard to belong to. Before dawn, I reached for my phone, scrolled through old messages. Nothing. No apology, no correction, no attempt to make room for me again. And then, a second email arrived, from the charter company. Subject line, cancellation confirmation, cabin reassignment approved. I blinked. Read it once, read it again. Requested by Sienna Whitmore. 3 days ago. No room for error, no room for me. I printed the email, slid it into a manila folder, labeled it personal, property, and legal. But in my head, I called it something else. Receipts. By the time Trent got home from work that night, the sun had dipped low across our living room floor. He dropped his keys in the dish like nothing had changed. I let him grab a beer, then said calmly, Sienna texted me. He took a sip. Yeah, about the trip? She said she forgot to reserve my spot. He blinked. Really? That seems weird. She called it a miscommunication. He hesitated, then offered, maybe she thought we weren't coming, maybe it was just a mix-up. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't flinch. It's not a mix-up, Trent. I got the cancellation notice. It was submitted by her days ago. He didn't argue, he didn't defend. He just went silent. And in that silence, I heard the loudest truth of all. The next morning, the kitchen was quiet. Even the coffee maker seemed slower than usual, like it, too, sensed something had shifted. I sat at the counter in an old sweatshirt, the kind with sleeves too long and a hole at the wrist, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. Not because I forgot, but because I couldn't stop thinking. The email, the voice note, the guest list. It wasn't just a slight anymore, it was evidence. I opened the bottom drawer of the credenza, the one labeled taxes and property. Tucked behind old financial statements and notarized contracts was a folder I hadn't touched in months. Inside it, everything. Receipts, bank wires, ownership agreements. The yacht wasn't just their tradition, it was my investment. It had started as a dream, 5 years ago, back when I was building my marketing agency from scratch. No angel investors, no generational wealth. Just me, late nights, cheap coffee, and a belief that if I just kept going, I'd get there. And I did. I signed the papers on the yacht alone. No fanfare, no champagne. Just a quiet moment in a lawyer's office, hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from relief. But when it came time to file the paperwork, Trent had said, let's list it jointly. It'll be easier for taxes and trust purposes. Our accountant nodded. Totally standard. And I had agreed, because I thought we were on the same side, because I believed being fair meant being equal. But what I didn't realize is that in the Whitmore family, joint ownership means ours when it's convenient, yours when it's uncomfortable. That day I laid out the documents across the dining table, page by page. Bank transfer receipt from my personal business account. Purchase contract, signed by me first. Maintenance bills, paid directly through my name. I wasn't the plus one, I was the co-owner, the foundation they now stood on without saying thank you. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just started packing. Not swimsuits, not sandals, not linen dresses for dockside brunches. I packed truth, neatly, deliberately. Each page slid into a sleeve, each receipt a silent rebuttal to the narrative they thought they controlled. I booked a car service to Cape Cod. The reservation confirmation popped up. Departure 8:15 a.m., drop-off Whitmore Marina. I didn't hesitate. That evening, Trent came home to find me sitting cross-legged on the floor, organizing file folders. He raised an eyebrow. What's all this? I looked up. Documents. For what? For my seat. He didn't ask what I meant. Maybe deep down he already knew. The next morning, I zipped the folder into my carry-on. No makeup bag, no jewelry rolls. Just evidence, and a calm that had taken years to earn. As I clicked the suitcase shut, I whispered, not with rage but with resolve. They tried to erase me. Now, they'll remember. The sun had barely cleared the rooftops when the car dropped me off at Whitmore Marina. There was a light fog hanging over the water, that soft, silvery kind that makes everything feel suspended, quiet, poised, just like me. I wasn't dressed for a party, no florals, no pearls, just a tailored navy dress, a tan coat that moved with the breeze, and a small black carry-on. Inside it, not outfits, not shoes, just truth, zipped up, paper-clipped, waiting. I walked the length of the dock, heels tapping with a rhythm that felt deliberate. The Whitmore yacht stood ahead like it always did, polished, imposing, smug. And there she was, Sienna. Perfect posture, hair pinned just so, a flute of champagne in hand and a frozen smile mid-conversation with someone I vaguely recognized from one of her charity brunches. When her eyes met mine, everything around her paused. Her mouth stopped moving, the air stiffened. For a second, I wondered if time itself had blinked. She hadn't expected me, not like this, not calm, not unapologetic, not real. Trent stood off to the side, not beside her, not beside me, just there, somewhere between discomfort and denial. And then, as I reached the top of the dock, a crew member stepped forward, tall, professional, neutral. She gave a small, respectful nod. And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Welcome aboard, Ms. Harper. The co-owner is now aboard." You could feel the shift. A flicker in Sienna's mascaraed eyes, the twitch of someone's champagne hand, a cough that came too quickly. And me? I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I didn't say a word. I nodded once, just once, then walked past them all. No one moved to greet me. They just parted, like curtains being drawn, unsure whether to pretend I wasn't there or admit that I had always been. The yacht's polished teak deck welcomed the click of my heels, every step echoing like punctuation. Statement, statement, statement. The floral centerpieces carefully arranged, the monogrammed napkins, the place cards written in Sienna's distinct handwriting. It all looked so precise. Like a stage set for a performance she thought would go uninterrupted. But here I was. I moved through the lounge without hesitation, didn't pause to say hello, didn't check for a seat. I wasn't here to be seated. I was here to stand, on truth, on ownership, on the foundation they thought I wouldn't claim. I stepped out onto the aft deck, alone now, the sea stretched wide before me. I breathed. Not deeply, not dramatically. Just finally. The yacht hummed beneath my feet as the engines came to life. Slowly, the dock slipped away. The marina faded. The land retreated like something being erased behind me. But this time, I wasn't the one disappearing. I gripped the railing, not to steady myself, but to release something. A weight. A silence. A history. Behind me, I heard the staff coordinating departure, champagne flutes clinking in uncertainty. Sienna's voice, lower now, sharp around the edges. But I stayed still. I didn't have to announce anything, my presence was the announcement. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't need an invitation. I had paperwork. And that speaks louder than any curated guest list. The yacht drifted farther from shore, slicing the water like it had somewhere more important to be. And maybe it did, because the air on board wasn't celebratory, it was tight. Like a room after someone says the thing no one's supposed to say, except no one had said anything. I had only arrived. Sienna hadn't looked at me since I stepped on deck. Not really, just a flicker, just enough to calculate how bad the damage was, how much further it might go. I sat in the lounge, legs crossed, posture easy, sipping lemon water like I had all the time in the world. Callista, a journalist friend of mine who happened to be on the guest list, slid into the seat beside me. Her voice was low, dry, knowing. I give it 10 minutes before she tries to reclaim the narrative. I didn't look at her, didn't need to. We both knew. Right on cue. Sienna stepped onto the upper deck, phone in hand, face angled toward the best light. Her voice switched to syrup. "Hi, everyone. We're so excited to share a little slice of our Whitmore tradition with you today." She angled the phone just right, catching the sunlight, the ocean, the champagne. There's nothing like being surrounded by family, by legacy, loyalty, love. I nearly smiled at the word loyalty. The people who are here, they understand what it means to build something that lasts. Not just wealth, but memory, commitment. She was crafting a message, a narrative, one where she was the heartbeat of the tradition and everyone else was lucky to orbit around her. And then reality happened. A crew member walked behind her, unaware, or maybe very aware, of the live stream. His voice was crisp, clear. "Glad to have you aboard again, Ms. Harper, the owner." The camera didn't shift, but her face? It did. Her smile froze, only for a second, but in live stream time, a second is forever. A beat, then silence. You could hear the waves, the faint chime of cutlery, someone coughing off screen. And then the comments started. "Wait, she's the owner? What just happened?" That vibe shift was wild. Sienna tried to recover, her voice pitched slightly higher. She smiled again, overcorrected. "So yeah, we just love spending time out here with family who really get it." Callista leaned toward me, eyes gleaming like she'd just seen a building collapse in real time. "That's going viral in 3, 2. And just like that, the chat exploded. "More about Ms. Harper, please." That's the real power move. She didn't say a word and still won. Sienna tapped the screen, tried to kill the feed, fumbled, disconnected, too late. The clip was already screen recorded, reposted, memed, and she knew it. She disappeared for almost an hour after that. But when she returned, her steps were sharper, her mouth set in a straight line. She found me near the stairwell by the port hallway, voice low, hissing. You planned that. I didn't blink, didn't move. Planned what? A man doing his job? Her eyes narrowed. Don't play dumb, Evelyn. I set down my glass, calm, measured. I didn't tell him what to say. I just showed up and let you speak your truth. Her voice trembled. You don't belong here. I stood slowly, looked her in the eye. That's the thing, Sienna. I don't need to belong. I bought my place. And I walked away, not triumphant, not angry, just undeniable. The dining salon sparkled like a wedding catalog. Candles flickered. Crystal glasses clinked just slightly too loud. And Sienna was in her element. She sat at the center of the long table, wearing a champagne silk dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, flanked by family members arranged like a photo op. Everything was just as she liked it, or so she thought. I sat farther down, quiet, not isolated, just observant, like a storm cloud with perfect posture. Dessert had just been served, vanilla panna cotta with a citrus glaze. I hadn't touched mine. My appetite had been replaced by something sharper, cooler, certainty. Sienna rose from her seat, glass in hand, her voice smooth as satin. I just want to thank everyone for being here. This tradition isn't just about yachts or luxury, it's about legacy, about honoring those who understand the value of what we've built. She didn't look at me, not once, but the message, it sliced like glass. We only bring those who contribute, who add to the family, not subtract. A few nods, a few murmurs. She smiled like a politician, and that's when I stood up. No warning, no clearing of throat, just me, rising into a silence so thick it shifted the air. I placed a folder, leather-bound, no logo, right in the center of the table, opened it with care, not for drama, but for clarity. If we're going to talk about legacy, I said, voice calm, I'd like to contribute. Forks paused midair. This is a transcript of a Zoom call from last month, I continued, between Sienna and the Whitmore family's legal counsel. A pause. Then I read aloud, word by word. She's not blood. She shouldn't own a family asset. The words dropped like ice into the center of the table. Silence. Sienna's smile vanished. And then I slid the second page forward. This is the purchase agreement for the yacht. Initial down payment, Evelyn Harper, sole investor, legal co-owner, listed first. Trent looked stunned. His mouth opened, then closed again like a fish too far from water. I wasn't angry, I wasn't shaking. I was finished waiting to be recognized. For years, I said, I let things slide. The brunches I wasn't invited to, the birthdays I found out about on social media, the stories that rewrote me out of the frame. But this isn't about inclusion anymore, it's about visibility. Someone at the far end cleared his throat, Harold, a family friend. I think we've all been told a different version of things. Others nodded, no outrage, just realization. Trent finally spoke. I didn't know she was doing this. He turned to Sienna. Why would you? Sienna stammered. I was protecting the family. I didn't think. I cut in. Soft, measured. No, you thought I'd stay quiet. Aunt Carol attempted to redirect. Maybe this isn't the right time. But another voice said, it's exactly the right time. And then Sienna sat hard. Her back straight, but her posture cracked just enough for everyone to see what she'd been holding together with control and curated charm. I gathered the documents, slipped them back into the folder, carefully, deliberately. As I turned to leave, I paused. If anyone ever wants to know the truth, I said without raising my voice, don't ask the loudest voice in the room. Ask the one who has the receipts. And then I walked. Not with triumph, not with vengeance. With peace, and a silence so complete it felt like the final word. Because it was. That night, the yacht didn't feel like theirs anymore. Not Sienna's, not the Whitmores, not the curated club of hand-picked family who smiled for photos and erased what didn't fit the frame. It felt neutral, cleared, like the stage had finally been swept after the performance ended. No one said much during the post-dinner lull. There was no music, no cheerful clinking of glasses, no impromptu photos with hashtags and lighting adjustments. Just small, scattered groups, muttering about weather, about work, about anything but what had just happened. Sienna didn't speak to me, not a word. She ate alone, downstairs in the lower salon. The staff brought her a fresh glass of wine. She didn't touch it. That silence, that was new. It wasn't my silence this time, it was hers. And it was heavy. The next morning, I sat alone in the lounge. Sunlight poured in through the windows. The coffee was strong, dark, exactly how I liked it. One by one, people passed by. Some paused, some didn't. But those who did, they said more in glances than in years of family banter. Maddie, Trent's cousin, always sweet, always diplomatic. She stood by the breakfast bar, fiddling with a spoon. I should have said something, a long time ago, she murmured. No eye contact, just truth. Aunt Carol, the one who once told me I was too serious, brought over an extra sugar packet, didn't say a word, just placed it gently on the table and walked away. Ron, Tom's older brother, walked by, muttered, "I saw it coming, just didn't think it'd crack like this." No one was defending Sienna, not because they turned on her, but because they finally saw me. Not the woman who married in, not the outsider, not the placeholder, but the woman who built something, the one who had proof and presence. Back in our cabin that evening, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. It wasn't Sienna I thought about. It was me. Not this version, not the woman who just stood at the table and reclaimed her seat, but the earlier version, the smaller one, the one who smiled through being overlooked, who dressed the part, who accepted being cropped out of photos and included by accident. I mourned her, not because she was weak, but because she held on so long, so tightly, to the belief that she could earn her place by playing nice. It wasn't grief, really. More like a goodbye. A quiet recognition that she had done the best she could, and that now she could rest. I got out of bed around 3 a.m., opened the folder, not to read it, just to hold it, to remind myself I didn't imagine any of this. And I don't need them to admit it for it to be true. The next morning, breakfast was served like nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, warm pastries. But the silence, it lingered. Not cold, not hostile, just different. They didn't avoid me anymore, but they didn't rush to include me either. They observed, as if something sacred had been uncovered, and no one quite knew how to honor it. I didn't need applause, didn't need explanations, I just needed this? A moment where I was no longer explaining my presence. I sat at the end of the table, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, not triumphant, just present, and that was more powerful than any toast could ever be. We docked 2 days later. No fanfare, no group photo, no final toast with matching robes and mimosa cheers. Just silence and packing. People moved slower, like they didn't quite know how to return to land, not because of seasickness, but because something heavier than water had shifted in the current. I stepped off the yacht alone. My suitcase clicked across the dock just as it had when I arrived, but this time, I wasn't carrying proof, I was carrying peace. When I got home, the house welcomed me with its usual silence. The creaky floorboard near the pantry, the pile of unread magazines on the entry bench, the framed photo of Trent and me from some gala I barely remember pretending to enjoy. Nothing had changed, but everything had. I unpacked slowly. Not just clothes, but years of quiet acceptance I would never carry again. By Wednesday afternoon, I was reorganizing the credenza drawer when I found it. A note, folded, yellowed at the edges, tucked between an old envelope and a forgotten grocery list. It was my father's handwriting, blocky, purposeful, unmistakable. It read, "Don't fight for a seat, build your own table." I sat with that paper in my hands for a long, still moment. I couldn't remember when he gave it to me. Maybe it was inside a birthday card. Maybe after some family dinner where I'd been invisible. Maybe he just knew. And now I knew too. A few days later, my phone buzzed with an unexpected name. Maya, Sienna's niece, 23, smart, always watching, rarely speaking. "Hi, Evelyn," her message said. "I hope I'm not crossing a line, but I've been thinking about the trip, about you. You're the only one in this family who built something yourself, not inherited, not married into. You made it. I'm applying for a business mentorship program, and I wondered, would you look over my application?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Legacy, I realized, doesn't begin with applause. It begins in quiet, in choices, in the people you help rise beside you, not the ones you beg to let you stay. That weekend I hosted brunch. Nothing formal, just eggs, toast, fresh strawberries, sunlight pouring across the kitchen island like a blessing. Trent brewed the coffee. Callista brought lemon bars. Ronald showed up with his wife, and I gave them the sunniest seats by the window. I didn't invite the whole family, not out of spite, but out of truth. This wasn't about excluding, it was about choosing who knew how to sit at a table and really talk. I said to Trent as he poured coffee. Not everyone needs to come, just the ones who belong. By spirit, not blood. He nodded, kissed my temple. And that meant more than any apology could have. Later that afternoon, as I rearranged the dining room bookshelves, I thought about what Sienna might have said if she'd ever actually apologized. Maybe she'd blame pressure, or tradition, or some version of protecting the family name. But I think I'd reply, quietly, just to myself, "I forgive you, but I don't need you to say it. Because this peace, it wasn't given, it was claimed, it was earned, it was mine." The table we sat around that day? It wasn't from the Whitmore estate, not heirloom wood or legacy crystal. It was a second-hand find I had refinished myself, with sandpaper and stain, and a vision of what could be. And maybe that's all legacy is. Not what's passed down, but what's built from scratch, with your own hands, when no one claps, when when no one's looking. There was no speech that day, no toast, just laughter, tangents, pauses that didn't need filling, and people who showed up, not because they had to, but because they chose to. I looked around the room. I smiled. This seat? It was never given. I built it. Sometimes the loudest power move is saying nothing, just showing up, with truth in one hand and peace in the other. Evelyn didn't win by yelling. She didn't scream for her place. She simply stood where she had always belonged. And maybe that's the lesson. That legacy isn't something we're born into. It's something we build, quietly, through choices no one claps for, on days no one sees. So if you've ever been made to feel like an outsider, if you've ever swallowed your voice just to keep the peace, remember, you don't need to fight for a seat when you're already building the table. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been erased quietly? Have you ever claimed your space without asking? And if this story moved you, even just a little, subscribe to Sweet Revenge Happy Ending so you don't miss the next chapter. Because the quietest stories often carry the loudest truths.